Hey, friends. Welcome to Wednesday night. You will notice the background's a little bit different, recording from my office at church. I'm just glad that you can't see the rest of the office because it's a little bit overwhelming for some people when they walk in and see the collectibles and the various items in here. But if you noticed by the title, this is Wednesday night, almost live with best friends. It's my dad's birthday tomorrow, so we're going to celebrate tonight with some nice prime rib for dinner. So happy 72nd birthday, Dad. So you will notice we don't do a ton of back and forth with commenting during these Wednesday night lives, but if you comment, I will not respond via the video. I might go back in and say hi to everybody. Feel free to converse amongst yourselves, just not directly with me because this will have already happened. But I didn't want to skip our Wednesday night, didn't want to skip Romans. And so we're going to jump into it. We do have a list as usual. So I found some signs and some posts that I thought would amuse you since they amused me. So let's go. So this is great. Stop hating on lazy people. We didn't even do anything. It's kind of true. This one, hey, if you keep stealing my plants because you can't afford to buy your own, please come knock on my door. I'll take you to the store and buy some for you. Very nice. That starts off nice. If you're doing it because you're just a mean jerk, then you should know that the day you took the last ones was the day I peed on them. You have pea plants now. Not quite as nice, but hopefully lessons learned. I'm not sure this is a sustainable and great business model, but we buy couches people died on. No thanks. No, thank you. Please do not leave children unattended. And then on second thought, we have to feed the sharks somehow. No, that's okay. Again, this is a dual message. Attention, dog guardians. Please pick up after your dog. We even put a box outside the church here at Brookridge because people were just coming in the lawn and kind of leaving presents there from their dogs. And that's no good when you step in that. Ugh. So, but then the nice part about the song is they don't forget the dogs. So there's a message for the dogs too. This is about outside a music store. No Stairway to Heaven. Sad. Here it is. You don't need a mirror. You're already beautiful. That's nice. And then it says, LOL, we just can't afford a mirror. You ugly. Not quite as great. Non-existent door. Do not use. That definitely is a door. And now it creates some curiosity of whether or not we should see behind the door or not. This is clever. Men at walk. Working during drinking hours. I don't know about that. British Community Church does not support that. These are just kind of normal icons, except the one on the left has a really long invisible neck. I don't know why the head is so high over the body. All right. Let's see. These are going to be, let's make it a little bit bigger. There's some posts 3 minutes into my run. I just decided I'm going to work on my personality instead. maybe you could work on both. Somebody's stuck on inside Wembley Stadium, genuinely tried 30 doors and none of them work. There's people on the field, so I don't know why you're not asking for help there. This is a 3-year anniversary cake that looks a little bit more like a hostage note or a threat. Let's see. Just learned that the woman I thought was my boss and I've been treating as my boss for the last 6 months is just a random employee. That's awkward. Nothing worse than going to your Airbnb and the ceiling being leaking. So then you text the owner. They're like, "Hey, indoor waterfall. That's awesome." That's a positive spin on things. How about in a conversation where somebody says, "You're so quiet"? You're like, "Thanks. I actually tried to speak twice, but you kept talking over me." Oh boy, that's a tough one. McDonald's Play Place incident. I was at McDonald's, the top of a slide with another kid. He said, "Go," and pushed me down into the dark. When I got out of the slide, he was somehow waiting for me at the bottom. I told my mom about it, and she said, "I'm glad you made a friend, honey." Okay. Another Airbnb story. Do you have somebody here to do locks? No, do not let her complete this process. Close and lock the doors. I'm calling my attorney. And then it's like, hey, Jen, we can't be in the middle of this. Please come down and handle this directly. Hey, it's your birthday. Like I mentioned, it's my dad's birthday. Love it when the daughter sends you some Apple Cash. I thought about this. $2.10. Hey, I could buy half a coffee. Thank you. Happy birthday to me. Let's see, traveling in 2025 is like got my bag packed, got my passport, updated my last will and testament. Okay. This is another one. You can't trust what you see online. Is Lady Gaga 2 days older than Ariana Grande? I don't know. Who cares? But the problem is AI says, yes, Lady Gaga is indeed 2 days older than Ariana Grande. Technically, she's a lot of days older than Ariana Grande. So I guess in the AI's mind, so I guess AI is not ready to take over the world yet. But Lady Gaga was born in 86. Ariana Grande was born in 93. Not even in the same month. So I don't know that, like, Lady Gaga is definitely 2 days older. She's a lot of days older. I don't know. Let's see. Someone posted, every boyfriend I've ever had taught me how to refill the air in my tires. Good luck to the next chump because it ain't going to stick, buddy. So again, she pretends she doesn't know to get her tires filled. You get a text from a random number. Will Lisa play tennis tomorrow? And instead of just ignoring it, you're like, yeah, she's feeling much better now. Unhelpful. Let's see. How about when the babysitter tells you you don't look old after you told her you were 34? It's kind of funny. Here's one. Usually when I see my dad, he sends me home with a cursed object. Last night we made pizzas, and he gave me a cassette tape full of glitter that will immediately break any stereo you use to play it. I'm not sure. I mean, it might be a good prank item. Glitter is the worst, right? It just gets everywhere. Yeah, that's a tough one. Let's see. Hey, scam. You've received UGX $8,500,000 from Give Direct Foundation. Hey, just click this link. Hey, respond, bro. I'm really in no financial position to be scammed. Try elsewhere. Okay. Okay, at least I understood. And here's the last one. My daughter's reaction to all natural homemade French vanilla ice cream with vanilla bean. I don't want the dirty ice cream. Oh, she only knew vanilla bean ice cream is very good. So I don't know. All right. Not everybody is grateful. Let's go to Romans. All right. We're in Romans 12. If you remember, we started in verse 9 last week. And we are going to continue in verse 9. And we got it. So I got 1 to 13 here. So if you remember, Romans 12, quick recap. This is Paul, after for 11 chapters, talking about how we're saved, why we are saved, like the gospel, like the beauty of the gospel, God's work in the gospel, our participation in the salvation process, as well as God's. And then Romans 12 to the end is what a person who is following Jesus, what a person who's experienced grace and forgiveness and salvation and rescue, what their life should look like. And in verse 9, we talked about love. And it's not like romantic love, but what a person who loves Jesus should look like. And we said last week that Jesus said the single most defining characteristic of his church should be its love. Your love for each other, as he told his disciples, is how the world will recognize that you belong to me. At the end of the day, what convinces the world that the gospel is true is not our defending of the faith, it's our love for each other. It's how we treat each other. I gave you a quote last week from Francis Schaeffer. He said, love on display in the church is Jesus' final apologetic to the world. And if we were really doing this, if we were really treating each other well, we would get flocks of people wanting to come be a part of what God is doing in our communities. So we said, what's that love look like and where does it come from? So verses 9 through 13, which we're going to finish up this week, discusses our love toward our friends. And then 14 to 21, which we'll pick up next week, is about love toward our enemies. We're all super excited about that. So here's what we said for verse 9. We said our love, number one, we had 6 things. So we did 3 of them last week. Number 1, our love should be genuine. without hypocrisy. That's verse 9. Clearly, let love be genuine. That's it. Self-explanatory, should be genuine. Number 2, we said our love should be grounded in God's truth. And this was the rest of verse 9. Abhor what is evil, or detest evil, hold fast or cling to what is good. We said a love void of truth isn't really love. Jesus loved us enough to tell us the truth, even though it got him killed. And we should have truth with each other too. Number 3, our love should feel like a family. And that's where we ended out. We said, you know what? Verse 10, love each other with brotherly affection. That's a big deal. There are people who church hop and aren't very committed nowadays. Nowadays, we'll just drop one group of people or one organization or whatever to switch to what's more convenient or what we like more, or the flavor of the month. Church is not supposed to be the flavor of the month. The body of Christ is supposed to be something we commit to as a family. You don't give up on your family. You don't give up on your church that God has led you to. All right. And now that brings us to number 4. Our love should recognize the worth that God has placed in every person. And this is where we get to the rest of verse 10 of Romans 12. Outdo one another in showing honor. We should be outdoing one another in showing honor. This is what the Church of Jesus is supposed to look like. To show honor means to recognize and acknowledge the value that someone has. Every culture shows honor. The basis of honor is usually, though, on your status or your rank or your accomplishments. In old Europe, it was based on your family. In America, it's definitely based on your accomplishments. The gospel teaches us, though, to feel differently and to think differently about people. It teaches us that every person has value because every person is someone made in the image of God. Every believer you see in church, talking about, again, loving the people in our church community, is somebody that was purchased at the highest price ever paid for something, the blood of the Son of God. Every believer, every person that's in our community possesses the Spirit of God and is destined one day to rule with Jesus Christ. And that may be hard to see now, but that's their future. So Paul's giving us a reason to love not just the people outside. I mean, we are supposed to love the people outside our community, but remember, this first part is about loving our friends, loving our family. C.S. Lewis said, this is a little deep, but he said it's a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, talking about that one day we will rule and reign with Jesus. He said to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet. If at all, only in a nightmare. He said, treat them that way. Treat every person like a celebrity. Outdo one another in showing honor. Trip over each other to show honor. One of the distinctive features of the Church of Jesus should be this. Historian Rodney Starks says one of the distinctive features of the early church was that honor was shown to all people. The church was the only place where the poor, the immigrants, the people of different rank and nationality were all treated with the honor that comes from being a child of God. The slave and the master were equal, and it was incredibly attractive because it pointed to a new humanity. They valued those that no one else valued. We talked about this in depth this past Sunday with our We Are Brookridge Send message. But one of the most fascinating ministries of the early church was their baby runs. The Romans in that day would toss baby girls into the street. They did not value their girls. And the Christians would rescue them and give them homes. In fact, one of the things you would always hear in a church service of the early followers of Jesus were the cries of the baby girls, because they gathered all of them. It was early church pro-life advocacy. We should be a place where groups that get overlooked by society are shown great honor as precious creations made in the image of God. That applies to the immigrant, the orphaned, the rehabilitating prisoner. Tim Tebow was a college football player that played in the NFL that now put together an organization called the Night to Shine. And it's a prom for mentally handicapped high school students, those with Down syndrome or disabilities. And the purpose of it was recognizing that many of them may never get to experience a prom. They host it often on a church campus, and they go all out with the lights, the music, the food. Everybody dresses up in tuxes. Some of the kids come in limousines. And as each student comes into the banquet hall, all the students and parents would form a tunnel. They yell and cheer and clap for that person. And you could just see the joy light up on their faces. It's very moving. They're showing honor because of how God sees that person. This should be a distinguishing feature of the Church of Jesus. Tim Tebow explains that he started doing this Night of Honor because he went on a mission trip at 15 and he encountered people that society had left behind. He said, that's when I realized that the good news of Jesus Christ applies to everyone. And this was a way to express that. So I am not an expert in immigration, and I understand that there should be laws and there should be protections. But I also know that every single person, including immigrants, is somebody that's made in the image of God and somebody that deserves to be honored as such. Jesus died for every single person. I know the reason that racism and prejudice are evil is because they refuse to recognize the honor and dignity that God has given to somebody. The reason abortion is wrong and evil is it fails to recognize that that baby, even if it has a cleft palate or is unwanted by their parents or has some sort of chromosome disorder, they're still a human being made in the image of God. It's one of the reasons we work hard at Brookridge to make guests feel welcome. We want, from the moment somebody drives onto our property, we want them to understand that you matter to God and that you are important to us. So we should fall over ourselves, Paul says, to show honor. Are you a competitive person? Why not try competing with others to show honor? All right, number 5. Our love should brim with the optimism of God's promises. This is verses 11 and 12. Do not be slothful, or do not lack diligence in zeal. Be fervent in the spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation or affliction. Be constant or persistent in prayer. And there's 6 commands in these verses, and they're kind of lumped into one category, not because I'm trying to be lazy, but because I think they speak about an attitude that we should keep in our ministry to each other. The context of these verses, again, is our love for one another. These are not just about our relationship with God, but don't lack diligent in zeal, fervent in spirit, in how we relate to each other and how we minister to each other. We know, those of us who experienced grace and forgiveness and the rescue that comes with salvation and having a relationship with God, we know the hope that the gospel promises in the lives of others. That means we're never talking to somebody that's too far gone. Our God is a God who brings life back from the dead. No matter who I'm talking to, there is hope. I'm never working in a circumstance too difficult. Like Paul says, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, because his resurrection proves that our labor is not in vain. That's 1 Corinthians 15. We should rejoice in the hope of God's good promises, knowing that God is relentless in his commitment to his children. Things like pain may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Isaiah said, "Oh, Israel," he was trying to encourage them, don't say that God hasn't heard you. It says the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He doesn't faint. He doesn't grow weary or tired. He gives power to the faint. To him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youth shall faint and be weary. Young men shall fall exhausted. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary, walk and not faint. When someone is severely afflicted, really going through it, we can help them bear their situation with patience because we know that God can and will work through all things, Romans 8, for good and for the glory of God, for those who love God. And then what Satan and maybe other people mean for evil, he can overturn that for good. That's Genesis 50. God, in his sovereignty, what others meant for evil, what the enemy meant for evil, God can turn it for good. We can be persistent in prayer because we have a God who hears and answers our prayer. Remember in Luke 18, we talked about it last week. Jesus told him the story of the widow who kept coming to the judge's door until her request was answered. And he told them the story so they would pray and not get tired. We're to persevere in prayer day and night until God answers and changes the hearts of those that we love. Psalm 103, from everlasting to everlasting, the Lord's faithful love is toward those who fear him, and his righteousness extends even toward our children's children. We don't let God go until he fulfills his promises. We'll see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Psalm 27, I fix my eyes on God because he's my refuge. Psalm 141. So yeah, I'm optimistic in the ministry of Brookridge Community Church and our network churches. I am optimistic in my family. As William Carey says, the future is as bright as the promises of God. And he was a missionary who endured some very, very difficult circumstances in his work. My God never slumbers. He doesn't sleep. You can never overestimate the size of the mercy of God. This is the last one. Our love should express itself in tangible actions. This is verse 13. Contribute to the needs of the saints or share with the saints in their needs. Seek to show or pursue hospitality. Paul says our love should not consist of mere words. So it's got to be sincere, right? It's got to mean something, not be hypocritical. And it also shouldn't just be words. It should be matched with actions. Most scholars see a distinction between sharing with the needs of the saints and pursuing hospitality. So Paul's not just being repetitive here. It's because in the Bible, hospitality typically means a love for the outsider, but taking care of the needs of the saints is how we care for people in our church communities. Opening our homes in hospitality is how we show love to people outside of the church. The order is important. We take care of each other first because we're family. There shouldn't be needy people in our church communities. We should be committed to each other in a way that we bear each other's burdens together, whether financially or health related or a problem, a struggle in marriage or with a child raising. When that happens, other people in the church should come alongside to help bear that burden. And then that love and commitment that we have for each other should then spill out onto the streets in the form of hospitality. I told you on Sunday the words of the Roman Emperor Julian. He was persecuting the Christian church, trying to get rid of the early church. But he said in disgust, the Christian cause has been specially advanced through the loving service rendered to strangers. He said it's a scandal that there's not a single one of them who is a beggar, and that the godless Galileans, that's what he called the Christians, care not only for their own poor, but for ours as well, while those who belong to us look in vain for the help that we should render them. Church was a better welfare system than Rome had. They took better care of the poor. How did the church multiply? Great musicians, great facilities, putting people in Congress? No. How they loved the people around them. So that's it. 6 ways we should love each other. Our love should be without hypocrisy, should be grounded in God's truth, should feel like family, should recognize the inherent worth that God has placed in every person, should brim with the optimism of God's promises, and express itself in tangible actions. Isn't this the kind of community that you would want to be a part of? Isn't this the kind of community that the outside world is longing for? Hopefully that's what you have found in your church community. You don't just want to be a consumer. You want to join as family. Are you connected? Are you volunteering? Are you engaging in the lives of other people in a way that you know their needs? They know yours, and you show up for each other? It's time to act on this. So that was a whole lot of shoulds. You should love like this. You should be like that. But don't miss that Paul's connecting all of these shoulds to being renewed in and saturated by the gospel. It all goes back to our relationship with God. Remember, therefore, in light of the mercies of God, you can be transformed into these kind of people. It's not accidental that Paul waited 12 chapters to get to these applications, because it's only through faith in what God has done that we're empowered in what we ought to do. The fire to do in the Christian life comes from being soaked in the fuel of what God has already done. The only way to love like this is to see yourself as a recipient of great love. 1 John 4, we love because he loved us first. So rooting yourself in the love of God is how your love for God and your love for others will grow in you. only way to grow in your love for others is to grow in your awareness of the love of God for you. It all goes back to the gospel. Martin Luther says to progress in the Christian life is to begin again. That's where you begin. The gospel is the root from which all the virtues of the Christian life grow. Grace starts with grace, a free gift we must receive. All right, the love of God for others, through us, for others. Hope you're challenged. Hope you do a good job loving the people in your community. We want to show the world what Jesus has done through us and for us. And that happens through the love that we have for each other in every aspect, not just in person, how we interact on social media, how we care for each other. In everything, we want to show the world that the love of God has been made manifest in our lives, that the gospel is actually working, that it does something to change us, to make us different than the world around us. All right. Hope you have a great rest of your night, rest of your week. We will be back to see you next Wednesday night at 7. Those of you who are jumping over to Bay State at 7:30, I wish you the best. By this time, I should be full of prime rib and full of family time, which is great.